So today we're gonna do an ice dye. Ice dye gives a watercolor-like effect on fabrics. The fabric you want to use is anything from a plant. Cotton, linen, rayon, any of those plant-based or cellulose fibers are great for this. I took my fabrics and I have pre-washed them in Synthropol and I have pre-soaked them in soda ash. I have short videos on both of those if you need a little refresher. But once my fabric is dry and ready, now I've laid it out and I'm going to bunch it up and put ice on it for the ice dye. So let me show you what's going on. So I have all of these peaks and valleys. Everyone loves that spiral in tie-dye, grab in the center and twist. I can do that with an ice dye as well. I'm just loose with it instead of tight like you would be with a tie-dye. Got my cosmic swirl all wrapped around there. Great. The next step is to load these up with ice. You don't want to be shy with the ice on these. Once you've dumped the ice on, spread it out and make sure that it covers all of the areas of your fabric. If you have little pieces of fabric peeking out, that's okay, but you don't want big chunks. You also don't want your ice layer to be too thick, so make sure it's not a huge pile on top of there. The next step for an ice dye is to put on your dye powder, which should not be breathed in, so be safe about this one. You're going to want gloves to make sure that you don't get dye on your hands, and you definitely need to wear a mask for this one. So put your mask on and get your gloves on, and let's get ready to put some dye on. So now I'm going to tap the powder jar and let the little dye particles sprinkle on to my piece. A little bit of one color and then switch it up. All right, we're ready to rinse. This step is important. I'm going to use Synthropol. Synthropol is going to grab onto any unbound dye and keep it from back staining. And since I have a lot of loose powder still hanging out on my fabric, I want to make sure and use this so that I don't dye undyed parts that I don't want. So I'm going to pour just a little bit. You can do a couple capfuls. It's going to depend on how much fabric you have. There's instructions on here on how much to use. I'm going to put my mask on in order to handle the fabric that has the dye on it, because some of the dye is still powder and loose and I don't want to breathe that in. All right, my fabric has been rinsed with Synthropol and then I put it through its own wash cycle. Now it's ready to mingle with all of my other laundry. This is that cosmic swirl. Beautiful undulating colors that look like a watercolor but made with dye. Ice dyes are incredibly fun. If you don't have the luxury of working outside, you can do them indoors as well. Outdoors, I use the grass to elevate my fabric so that all of the ice as it melts has a place to go and it's not sitting in a puddle of dye. So here what I've got is a plastic bin and a dry rack. You could also use string, mesh, or any other type of netting that would give an open area so that as the ice melts, it has a place to drip. My box will catch all of the dye that drips. I'll wad my fabric up, load it up with ice, and sprinkle the dye on top. This is a great way to do it indoors if you don't have an outdoor area to work in the grass.